right, so we're here with Jason Fisher, Indie Alehouse's owner, and we're going to be taking a look into the business and the history behind it and where we're going today. So Jason, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Awesome.
I mean, the short version of it is I was a home brewer for a long time, dating back to high school, which is a whole other story, but and enjoyed brewing and loved doing it, but didn't really have the means to open a brewery at the time. Basically, you needed to be born into a brewing family in the 80s if you wanted to be a brewer, or go live in Germany or England. And so I went into business, and I worked at big businesses and learned as much as I could, saved, and wasn't 100% sure I would ever be able to do it, but saved for a very long time. And then in 2008, when the world economy was melting down, interest rates got good, and the market here was still very suppressed. There was a lot of craft beer in the States and other parts of the world, but nothing in Ontario. A few stalwarts who've been around for a long time, but not a lot of adventurous stuff. And so partially I had saved for a while, I had studied for a while, and the market kind of became right. There was a time where if you came in and made an IPA and a porter and a wheat beer, you'd be the only one doing it, where that was a big recipe for success in the States. So the market kind of was getting to the right point when I got to the right point. So I jumped in, and that was, we finally opened in 2012 after looking at a lot of locations, hundreds of buildings, talking to banks. It took a while. And at the time, if you wanted to open a brewery, the city of Toronto basically said no. But if you want to open a corner store, they had a checklist.
Right.
If you want to open a brewery today, they have the checklist. So there were a few of us, Indie was one of them, who kind of paved the way to the hundreds of breweries that are now open. When we opened, no one had opened a brewery in the city in about 20 years.
So why beer? Tell me why beer.
So you don't have to own a orchard,
Right.
or a winery.
Correct.
So it's certainly, I don't have to own hundreds or thousands of acres to be a winemaker.
Right.
I really like beer. I traveled a lot for work and got to go around the world, and there are great beers everywhere, particularly a lot in the States and in Europe. So you got exposure to things that you would come home and say, man, I wish we could get something like that here.
Right.
And that's usually a sign to, maybe we should just make that.
Right.
Or figure that out. So there were brewers and there were business people who would say, Ontario doesn't have that taste. And I found it hard to believe that people in Buffalo had a more cosmopolitan taste than people in Toronto. And that's crazy.
Right.
Because you could go to a gas station in Buffalo and get hundreds of different beers.
Right.
And in Toronto you could get 6.
Right.
This is nonsense.
Right.
So we're going to figure this out.
Okay.
So that was partially why beer.
Right. So, I mean, there's a ton of Brewpubs around, and of course, I am familiar with Indie Alehouse, and it is a popular brand.
Sure.
And it's well known. What is it about you guys that makes you guys stand out?
So there are a ton of breweries, but there aren't a ton of brewpubs. We'll just walk into the brewery here and I'll show you.
Okay.
So the brewpub includes this restaurant and the brewery.
Okay.
Most, probably 95% of the breweries in Ontario are just a brewery space.
Right.
There may be a food truck, someone may make grilled cheese, but it's not really a restaurant.
Correct.
So this is a little harder to start up. It costs more. You have to run 2 different businesses.
Right.
When you run a bar business or a restaurant, you sell beer that you have to buy at a high markup and then mark it up more.
Correct.
When you make that beer,
Right.
and it goes literally from here to the other side of the wall,
Right.
there's no middlemen,
Correct.
there's no margin, there's a lot of tax, but otherwise all that money stays here.
Right.
So that's, from a financial point of view, the brewpub model looks really good on paper.
Right.
From a brand point of view, we get to talk to our customers. There's
Right.
no third party involved, right? So everybody who talks to our customer has been in this room, has made beer, knows our brewers, can call them at home if they need to.
Right.
Like, you can get the best answers about Indie Alehouse on site.
Okay.
So if you're another brewery and you're shipping your beer 500 miles away, and it goes to a distributor, and then it sits in a warehouse, and then it goes to a sales rep, and then it goes to a beverage manager and a bartender,
Right.
they're not going to answer a great question
Absolutely.
about your beer, and they're not going to be as good at repping your brand. Now, they can scale.
Right.
We have 140 seats, and that's what we have.
Right.
So we have a more intimate, close contact with customers, and that partially works for the Indie Alehouse model of make a lot of crazy beers. So we have
Right.
4 or 5 regular beers that anybody who drinks beer would say, "Why, that's beer, I understand that."
Okay.
And then we have some crazy town things where we put coconuts in, or raspberries, or
Right.
whatever we can get our hands on.
Right.
And the object isn't to just be dumb and put strange things in a beer, but to get different flavors out. Use different yeast, use different grains, and try and get a beer that has a lot of tropical notes, or that's going to be really good on a rainy day in the fall. Or like
So if I can ask, what's some of the inspiration behind some of the flavors that you do? Do you have an in-house R&D? Do you see what's out there?
a lot of R&D.
Okay.
But R&D is rip off and duplicate is what we call it, but
Okay.
that's the joke.
Right.
Drinking beer as R&D is a great R&D job. Like, that's a lot of fun.
I'm sure.
Brewers like to share with other breweries, because even if we had the exact same recipe on different equipment with different environments, it'll come out slightly different.
Okay.
So consistency shows off your skill. If we can make the same beer the same again and again, that's the skill part. Now, different markets, different climates, different foods, but there's some consultation between the chef and the brewer, and myself and the general manager. We're talking to customers and we're like, what would we like to introduce in the menu? Do we want to make a fried chicken sandwich, or make a jerk chicken sandwich? And what
Right.
beer are we going to be happy with pairing with that? Because there's a lot of choices.
Right.
And then someone will say, I read in this magazine, there's this new grain and it's coming out of Austria, and let's
Right.
try that. So we have these tanks here. Okay. Some of the tanks are on regular duty. So this will make the same beer again and again and again, because it's
Okay.
our best selling beer.
Okay.
But this one's our rotating tank. So when it's empty, we'll make a new one.
Right.
So all the beers coming out of this tank are one-offs. You'll never see them again. Now,
Right.
if they're amazing
Right.
and we get a lot of pressure, we'll make it again. Now, sometimes we decide we want to make this beer again, and then nobody else likes it. And we're like,
Right.
we're not making the beer again.
Right.
And sometimes we think that beer was terrible, and other people are like, this is amazing.
Right.
So you have to listen. You can't judge for yourself too much. We take our best shot, and then, we're not too stubborn about it. But some of it is seasonality. Some of it is you get access to new ingredients, because for a time you got what your one supplier brought you. There's 7 or 8 suppliers, and you can call a brewery in Texas and say, hey, where'd you get that weird yeast that made that, kind of really nutty flavor come out? And they'll say, oh, there's this monastery in Belgium, and if you call on Wednesdays, they'll answer the phone, and you're like, oh, I'm going to try that. And so we did that, and we got this yeast.
Got you.
So some of it's the adventure of being an artisan and trying new things.
Right.
Some of it is business.
Absolutely.
Just pay the bills.
So what is the
have some fun.
Got you. So what is the capacity of one of these tanks?
So
Like, how
this
much
is
can I use?
this is what's called a 20 hectoliter,
Okay.
which is 2,000 liters. Hectoliter is 100 liters.
Right.
In Canada, we say hectoliters. In America, they say barrels. They're relatively close.
Right.
So this is 20,000 liters. Sorry, 2,000 liters.
Okay.
So if you imagine a standard pint glass of being a little under half a liter,
Okay.
it's 4,000 glasses of beer.
Right.
And if we make our Instigator IPA, this is gone in 2.5 weeks.
Right.
If we make a crazy 11% beer with walnuts and raspberries, and it's, this will take 2.5 months.
Okay.
But you can sell this beer for $20 a liter, because it's going to come in smaller glasses. You can sell this beer for $14 a liter. So time, math, money is certainly one of the considerations. What you want to do, what you see in the market, flex your skills a little bit. There are other practical considerations when you're ordering a truckload of grain. This grain's not going to work for that beer. Do I want 2 truckloads, or do I want to time that second truckload? So there is, when brewers say we just brew what we want, that's mostly true, but you also want to pay the bills and you want to be in business. So there's a little bit of reality that creeps in, but not a lot. We can kind of do whatever we want.
Okay. Awesome. So I know that, of course, COVID has been a thing. We're all in the same boat. How have you guys navigated that? How have you guys navigated that landscape?
So one of the pros, what the pros and the cons of being a small brewery are, we can make decisions really quick. I don't need to call the home office. We decided, we have a meeting, that's the end of it.
Right.
So we can react fast. One of the cons are we don't have a lot of data. There isn't really a pandemic playbook. We want to be a little cautious because we don't have infinite resources. If we guess wrong, we're going to eat that for a while. And then the opportunity cost is what kills you. We spend our money on one thing and it should have been another. We have to wait to get that money back. We can change our mind, but we can't necessarily find more cash. So deciding to put beer into kegs or cans early on was a gamble. We were lucky We were just about to launch some beer into the LCBO before COVID. So on the one hand, we were unlucky that got delayed. On the other hand, we had a lot more beer in cans, which was the only way to sell beer. So it kind of evens out. The harder part is the stress.
Right.
You know, we had 57 employees. We have 14 now, maybe 11, depending on who's on vacation. So, you know, the people have been with us for 7-8 years. It's hard to say, I don't have anything for you. If you're a server, or there's no bar, you can't be a bartender. You have to go home.
Right.
You know, we did a fundraiser for some employees, but that was pretty hard. And then not knowing what's it going to be like tomorrow. Should I watch the premier talk on TV? Should I look at these numbers? Should I clean the floor? So it's been hard. The thing about beer is people have been drinking beer for about 5,000 years,
Right.
and they're going to drink beer during the pandemic and after the pandemic.
Probably even drink more.
Yeah, so we just need to find a way to reach the people. And there was a time where we decided, let's not do any marketing this month. It's a little crazy out there. And if you're worried about your family or your health, what you don't need is me dancing around saying, buy my beer. You just we'll be like, we're here when you're ready. You take care of yourself for a while.
So another question for you. I know, of course, in the brew pub / restaurant business, the biggest margins tend to be with beer, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who wanted to actually go into the restaurant / brew pub space?
So we get literally 99% of the breweries that have opened in the last 8 years in Ontario have come in here and either asked us or tried to ask us. And we will share with anybody. That's how this industry works. Someone helped us. Ron at the Granite helped us when we were like, how do I fill this paperwork out? Because all the brew pubs together are less than 1% of the industry. So We're not fighting with each other. We're fighting with Molson and Labatt's and people who charge $20 for terrible beer. So we're trying to, do what they did in the States and what they did in Europe, and it's a pretty good model. What I would say is, it's way harder than you think. It's not a sexy thing. If you're doing this because you think you'll be cool, go surf, do something else. But you need to, I would say, use data, build a model, right? Don't believe a person, believe the numbers. The numbers won't lie. The best breweries have a kind of a vision. This is what we're going to do. And somebody in that brewery is very skilled at that job. They're not just, we're going to put some money on a table and figure it out. You're not buying a franchise like you are with KFC. You need to know cooking or you need to know brewing. So you need a brewer. You can't just be like, yeah, I'll go hire a brewer. It'll be fine. Man, those breweries don't do as well as the places founded by brewers or have a brewer in the partnership team.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time
no
today,
problem.
and we appreciate you, and we'll be looking forward to what comes next with Indie
Yeah,
Alehouse.
for sure.
All right, sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.